Hey there! You're probably wondering what this is. Well, recently I had someone ask me about how you make an OC, or original character, if you wasn't aware of what that stood for. I wasn't quite sure how to answer them right off the bat, and tried to provide them with some videos. That's when I realized that there wasn't that much content on the subject at all, and decided it wouldn't be a bad idea to try and make a video of my own. Anyways, for this video, I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite OCs, Birdie. She's one of my Hazbin Hotel OCs, and I'm going to walk you guys through the process of how I made her so you can make your own OC. This video can apply to more than just Hazbin Hotel OCs. Though I won't be able to use the footage of me drawing pieces of Birdie, as I recently got a new phone and didn't really have the time to save my process videos. I will show pictures of her though, and there will still be background drawings, just for the designs of Helliver's characters in my Tomodachi Life OU I've been working on instead. Let's get right into the video. First things first, when you want to start a new character, it's a good idea to have a jumping off point. For me, in particular, that was Hazbin Hotel. I had just finished watching the series and I was really inspired and wanted to write a morally great character for the universe. Of course, there are other things that this can be, like a story idea, a job, a song, anything really. Heck, even an object. As long as you're inspired and have an idea, pick up a pencil and go for it. When it came to Birdie, I was pretty certain about what I wanted. I wanted to make a sinner. I also knew that I wanted the character to be from the Wild West area and an outlaw. After your initial idea comes backstory slash design. And you're probably thinking, hey, shouldn't that be two different steps? Well, they can be if you want. The creation process isn't the same for everyone, but I've gone in the habit of doing both at once. I've found that a lot of my characters' backstories and personality influence the way they dress, and that a way a character dresses can also be a good indicator of certain things about them. When it comes to the backstory for characters, it's always a good idea to ask a few questions. Like, where are they from? What did their childhood look like? And what was their inciting incident? And how did they react to such things? There's also a few other questions I ended up asking myself when I was making Birdie. Those were, what were her sins? How did she become an outlaw in the first place? What would represent her the best? And how in the world did she die? Also, depending on your setting and the answers to those questions, you may want to do some research. I did a lot on Western America during the 1850s to 1870s for Birdie. I wanted to make sure she was mostly historically correct. I said I would not do the same things that spaghetti westerns do, and I committed to that. As an example, I'll give you Birdie's backstory. Birdie was originally born in Montana in the later half of the year 1851 as Elizabeth Catherine Duke. Her father, Edward, was an English American who was very wealthy and the owner of a railway, while her mother was an African American woman who was married to Birdie's uncle. Despite the fact that she was mixed, Birdie was passing enough for her father to actually keep her close. Growing up, she and her father would actually get into a few arguments, mostly because Birdie enjoyed wearing trousers and running around outside and doing nothing at all that a young lady should enjoy doing. Birdie's inciting incident came later in life when she was around 16 years old. Her father had put off making her get married for as long as he could, and mostly because Birdie kept refusing proposal after proposal after proposal. However, he finally decided to put his foot down and declares she'll get married to one of his business associates, whether she likes it or not. Now, Birdie didn't like this. She had no particular interest in men, and the thought of being married seemed kind of like death to her. It would be like giving up her freedom. So she did the only thing she could. She ran away. For a while, she survived off of pickpocketing strangers, but it was hardly enough to get by. And for a bit, she almost considers turning around and going home, and doing just as her father asked of her. However, she had made a mistake and stole from the wrong man, which ended her up in a duel. Now, Birdie, being terrified and a child, shoots him in the back, and then she steals his gun and jumps town via train. Unfortunately, the boxcar that she happened to jump onto already was housing a group of criminals by the names of Johnny, Ada, and Skinner. Johnny gives Birdie an ultimatum. She either joins them or jumps from the car. Now Birdie, not wanting to die, decides to do the logical thing and join them. Over the next few years, the gang commits a number of crimes, all the way from train robbery to burning an entire town down to the ground. They also happen to pass through the area of Phoenix, Arizona quite a bit, enough to the point that they are considered regulars at a saloon in town. One of the barmaids, named Leona, happens to be taken aback, particularly by Birdie. Most people at the time would have assumed that she was a man from the way she dressed, and so did Leona. Birdie warmed up to her, but she did keep her at arm's length. Eventually, though, she does have to confront the truth and tell Leona that she's not a man, because the other members of her gang decided it would be funny to buy her a night alone with her. Yeah, they aren't the greatest of people, but Birdie loves them still. Surprisingly, Leona ends up not caring. She cares for Birdie regardless of if she is a man. By the time the gang does end up going their separate ways, Birdie and Leona live together and raise Leona's illegitimate son, Charles. Despite the fact that Birdie is no longer associated with the gang, she continues to rob people to provide money. She is convinced at this point in her life that crime is the only thing she is good at. During this time is when a letter arrives, and that letter is from Margaret, Birdie's younger sister. And in this letter, Margaret tells Birdie of how horrible her husband is. And Birdie, feeling particularly responsible, considering Margaret wouldn't be in that position if she had not ran off, decides to go help her. She tells Leona and Charles she'll be back in 3 days and promptly leaves. Now Birdie, being the person she is, the moment her brother-in-law opens the door for her, she puts a bullet in him. She is then promptly ambushed by the sheriff, as this was all a trap, particularly laid by her father Edward in order to get her bounty, since Birdie had ran their family name into the ground. Birdie was hung the next day at noon, dying angry and alone. Going into designing Birdie's uniform, I was already starting to get a good idea of what I wanted for her. The animal I chose to represent her was a spider, considering a big part of her life was her association with the gang. And getting even more specific, I decided a black widow would be a good match for her. I even gave her a trait based on them, a venomous bite. The black widow also helped me decide on her color palette. If you find yourself having trouble picking a color palette, there's generators out there that can give you some. You can just spam through them until you find something you like for your character. I'll try to provide a link for one down in the description. When I was creating Birdie, I limited myself to blacks, whites, and reds. The extra limbs also help play a part in Birdie's design. One pair of hers grow out of her back near where her shoulder blades would be. She isn't a fan of them and covers them up, mostly because they show her as a literal backstabber, or back shooter if you would. Another important thing I chose was her markings. I decided that since she was often mistaken for a man during life, that I would give her white markings like male black widows in her hair. To counteract this, Birdie ends up sewing the red black widow symbol onto her hat that she wears all the time, and also carving it into the butt of her gun. Another important feature is the rope around her neck. Not only is it a constant reminder of her death, it's also a punishment. It can't be removed. The harder and more she tries, the tighter it gets. My favorite feature by far, though, is her big red boots. She wore a pair all throughout life, and she still wears them after death. If nothing else, her boots are consistent. Her bangs, on the other hand, are not. They've slowly grown the longer I've had her as a character. Funnily enough, Birdie's human design came later on, mostly because I had an idea of what I wanted, but was having a horrible time actually doing the art. So I used a pit crew instead. The particular one I used was Old Timey Cowboy Maker by Crispy Bits. Their socials will be linked in the description below. The Pit Crew is actually for male characters specifically, but it didn't affect that much. And honestly, I think you guys should really check it out if you get the time. It's pretty cool, especially considering there isn't many Wild West pit crews out there. The next step is character personality. Every character deserves some good personality traits. It's also a good idea to try and give them a mix of both positive and negative traits. Of course, there's nothing wrong with writing Mary Sue's if that's what you're into. I just find them a bit bland to write. For an example, I'll share some of my favorite traits from Birdie, and also link to some helpful list of personality traits down in the description. Some of her good traits include her love of cats, her love of sweets, and her general enjoyment from giving other people just stupid, dumb nicknames. Some of her more negative traits are her stubbornness, bluntness, and refusal to lie. Some more complex traits she has is her valuing her own freedom and her view on love. Particularly the fact that she thinks it has to be earned. Okay, we've done design. We've covered the background. You've given her traits. What could possibly be left? Well, the final and probably one of the most important parts of making a character. Giving them a name. And to be honest, naming Birdie was a very hard process. Of course, I have my first way of finding names is the good old baby name website. If you have the time and want to, give them a scroll. I'm sure you'll find something that you enjoy. Another way is to take a trait about your character or the story you are writing for and just Google names that have a similar meaning. It's a bit of a trope, sure, but it does work. And if both of those fail you and you're still having trouble, there's still hope. Name generators exist. There's a multitude of them out there, and they're a perfectly good resource for naming a character. I'll link my favorite down in the description. The way I came up with Birdie's human name was a bit different from this, though. I needed a period accurate name and couldn't just slap something modern on her, so I did what any sane person would do. I read through census data. Eventually, I settled on Elizabeth Catherine for her first and middle name. This also gave me a personality trait for Birdie's father when I designed him later, that he was obsessed with reading about kings and queens. Her last name was where I hit the real snag. I wasn't sure what to do there, so to the name generator I went. It gave me a list of last names, and there among them, like gold, was Duke. And finally, my character had a name. Except she didn't. Because she was dead. And figuring that she would want to rid herself of the connection to her family, I decided to give her an alias as well. And the one I landed on was both poetic and ironic all at once. I'll just quote from my own writings, from Birdie's perspective, instead of going on a full-blown tangent. Name. Right. She had a name. It was Elizabeth Duke, of course. Eliza looks down at her hands, now resting limp in her lap. Elizabeth was the girl who ran, who died. She wasn't Elizabeth anymore. Elizabeth had been caged by the world around her, by her own feelings. But she wouldn't be caged anymore. She was free. Free to be whoever she wanted, free to go wherever she wanted. Just like the birds. And that was who she was. Birdie, the spider said, smiling. Just Birdie. And with that, you've successfully created your own character! Woohoo! Congrats. Anyway, if you made it this far into the video, I would love if you liked and subscribed. It's not something I generally feel good about asking people to do, but the YouTube algorithm does like it. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Feel free to tell me about your characters in the comments, and let me know if you would like more videos telling you about other characters of mine. Alrighty then, trash out.